So we're going to work on some exercises to connect through the transversus in neutral spine. Neutral spine can be weird feeling if you're not used to it. So we're going to give ourselves a little support with a towel or something. I have a towel that I've just kind of folded up into quarters and quarters. Play around with the thickness because it's going to be really dependent on your body. If you have a more ample posterior, as I do, you might want a little thicker pad. If you're pretty flat, you'll want a thinner pad. So you're going to play around and feel what feels right for your body. And what you're looking for is a feeling that the back of your rib cage is settled on the mat and that your tailbone is settled on the mat. But the space in between, kind of from the top of your pelvis to the base of your ribs, is a little bit of supported by whatever towel, or like you could even use a sweatshirt or a t-shirt just folded up, something that you shove in that space to help you maintain the natural curvature of your spine. Because when we're neutral, our spine isn't flat, right? It's a little bit round. So we're going to start laying down on our backs and we're going to have the item, whatever it is, underneath us. And as I said, I want it kind of starting at the top of my pelvis. So it's not really supporting the back of my pelvis, it's above it. And it ends below my ribs. And I can feel like I'm pressing down through here. And like I said, my tailbone is down, but the space in between is a little bit lifted. And then we're going to practice that wet t-shirt feeling. We're going to use our fingers here, take them to the hip bones, and then slide them in an inch or two until you're on meat. And take a deep breath. As you exhale, you're blowing out a candle. You're thinking about that tightening, trying to pull your skin away from your wet t-shirt. And you can think about trying to draw your hip bones in towards each other. What we're feeling for with our fingers is just a feeling of that there's something turning on underneath them, right? Our transversus is easiest for us to feel down here in the pelvic bowl. You can also add into that a little bit of a pelvic floor contraction and see if that helps you feel the connection a little bit more deeply. So with your pelvic floor, you're thinking about it drawing in and up with your exhalation and with the contraction this way. So deep breath in, exhale. Ideally, your pelvic floor and your transversus kind of work together. So when one contracts, the other one can contract as well. It's complicated. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Your breathing is also part of that system as well. So if it feels like super duper out of whack and you're really having a hard time making a connection there, you might want to shoot me an email or get in touch with another Pilates instructor or something like that. But assuming that these things are kind of making sense, we're going to move on and add some movement to it. So now I want to keep my thumbs on my ribs and my pinky fingers on my hip bones. And while I'm moving my body, we're going to start with moving the legs. I don't want the space between my ribs and my hips to move. I want it to stay still. And I want to maintain that wrapping in feeling the whole time. So you have different options with your hands. I like this with my thumbs and my pinkies. You can also give yourself this little bit of wrap and interlace your fingers. And you can hold it lower on your belly or more up at your ribs, whatever feels like it's giving you better feedback. But again, the most important thing is that you're always tightening. So you could even have one hand on your belly button and just be thinking about constantly trying to pull your belly away from your hand, like if you were wearing the wet t-shirt again, while you're moving. So we're going to start with one leg up deep breath. And as you exhale, you're keeping that tightness through your belly and you're putting the foot down and lifting up the other foot. Now, as I'm switching my feet, I'm trying to keep them super light so that I'm not pressing down to lift the other foot up. Did you see how that made my whole body shift a little bit? I'll do it one more time. So when I do that, I am creating stability externally by pressing into the floor, and I want to create stability internally. So I'm going to lift my heel and do it again and see if I can just keep my foot barely touching the ground really lightly, or you could imagine that you're laying on a sheet of ice and that if you pushed your foot into the ground, your foot would slide out from underneath you. All the while, keeping that sense of drawing everything in. So again, you could have your hand on your belly and just be thinking about pulling your belly away from your hand. Now, if this feels okay, let's make it harder. We're going to have both legs up and then one toe taps and lifts back up. So now, since we're not resting one foot on the floor, we have to create all of our stability internally. We don't have any support from the ground. And notice my breath. I'm exhaling as my leg goes farther away from me. Again, breathing is a super important part of this stability system. And exhaling is going to make it easier for you to turn on the abdominal muscles that we're trying to find here. So exhaling with a little force will help you find a little bit more connection. And then let your feet rest down. So next thing, same sort of idea, keeping everything here still, but instead of my leg going this way, I'm going to take my leg out to the side. As I open it out, I'm keeping my hip bones pointing up at the ceiling. They don't get to shift. And my leg that's not moving has to stay pointed straight up at the ceiling. It doesn't get to counterbalance. Counterbalancing of the leg and shifting of the hip bones is going to go together. So it might be a pretty small motion in order to keep everything here still and to keep your belly flat. Keep with the breathing. Keep with that sense of the space between your ribs and hip bones staying still. And also notice, are you trying to press into your support? Right now that we've got something under there, you can actually feel when your impulse is to try to curl and tuck to find stability, right? Because the thing, whatever it is keeping you from doing that. So pay attention to that impulse and see if you can stop it by wrapping instead of pressing. Yeah? So now we're going to do a heel slide. This one's a little tricky, but I find it super duper helpful. So same rules here. That impulse to curl is going to be really strong. I'm going to flex one foot and I'm going to start extending my leg. But I'm only going as far as I can, maintaining that distance between my ribs and hips and the flatness of my belly. My knee might not straighten all the way. And there's a sense of opposition. My leg is trying to reach towards the wall, but I'm thinking about tension from my pubic bone towards my ribs. So I've got tension here in the same direction as the curl, but I'm not trying to curl and press my back down. Then I'm going to press down through my heel so the back of my leg is working, and I'm going to use the back of my leg to drag my foot back in. Now I'm going to keep working on the same side, and that exhale is really important here. So deep breath in, exhale, and slide. Tension from pubic bone to ribs without curling. Reach through the back of the leg. Maintain the connection between your hip bones and your ribs. Press down and drag back. Let's do 2 more on this side. Now, as you're extending your leg, you might start noticing a feeling of stretch really deep through the front of your hip. And you are, in fact, stretching your psoas and your iliacus when you're doing this correctly. So that would be a good thing to feel. And I notice that each time I do it, my knee gets a little straighter and I can reach a little farther because I am stretching my hip. And then we'll switch to do the other side. So deep breath, exhale, reach energy out through the heel and through the back of the leg. Hip bones are tightening towards the ribs, tension from pubic bone to rib cage, belly is flat. Press down, use the back of your leg to pull your heel back in. We want to avoid using the front of the hip or the quad in this exercise as much as possible. We don't want to use it at all. We want to use the hamstring and the hip flexors. If you feel your back getting pulled away, you've gone too far. And then we're going to do one more. We're going to use the arms. And we're going to reach the arms up with our palms facing in. Pinky fingers are active, so think about trying to reach towards the ceiling. And now we're focusing on keeping the ribs still, right? So the transversus is stabilizing our rib cage and our pelvis both. We've been stabilizing our pelvis and moving our legs. Now we're going to stabilize our ribs and move our arms. So I'm thinking about the front of my rib cage tightening in and reaching towards my hip bones. The back of my ribs is trying to settle down onto the mat. So the spot where my ribs meets my lumbar spine is trying to sink. Then, deep breath in. As I exhale, now I'm reaching my arms back. I'm keeping my hands shoulder distance apart, my elbows straight, and my pinky fingers turned up towards the ceiling. And I'm only going to go as far as I can keep all of those connections and keep my ribs still, and inhale, lift back up. And we'll do a couple more like that. Exhale. Think about reaching your fingertips towards the wall and keeping that flatness in your belly. We'll do 2 more. And let your arms rest. All right, so that's it. Some pretty basic stuff, but when you do it with a lot of focus and intention, you can start to feel how this awareness can transfer into basically all of the work that you do. Whether you're doing abdominal work, whether you're doing strength training, whether you're working in the air, this idea of tension and connection through your middle is something that you want to try to create all the time without curling, right? Curling is a whole other thing. It is also super duper important, but you need to be able to start here in a stable position before the curl becomes effective. Please let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to leave a comment on the video, email me, send a carrier pigeon or a smoke signal, whatever. I'm happy to answer them. Like I said earlier, if this is really challenging and not making sense, you might need more help. And I can help you. Other Pilates instructors can help you. You might want to talk to a pelvic floor PT. There's help out there, but especially if like the pelvic floor and the breathing thing didn't make sense, it might be a bigger issue. Hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.